We start the day's other headlines with the deepening political crisis in South Korea. The country's parliament has voted to impeach acting President Han Duck-soo. Today's vote is the nation's second impeachment in just 2 weeks. It comes after Han decided against appointing 3 judges to the court, reviewing the previous impeachment of his predecessor. President Yoon Suk-yeol was impeached on December 14th after his decision to declare martial law earlier this month. That decision set off a series of events that has left the nation in turmoil, and it leaves the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Choi Sung-mook in charge. The White House now says it, too, sees indication that a Russian air defense system may be to blame for an Azerbaijani airliner crash this week, echoing preliminary findings by Azerbaijani officials. The flight was heading from Azerbaijan's capital of Baku to the Russian Republic of Chechnya when it turned toward Kazakhstan and crashed while trying to land. In Azerbaijan, the first funeral took place today for one of the 38 people killed. 29 others survived with injuries. For its part, Russian officials say fog and the threat of a Ukrainian drone strike prevented the flight from landing at its initial destination. Turning to the Middle East, Palestinian health officials say Israeli soldiers raided and burned one of the last functioning hospitals in northern Gaza today after forcing many staff members and patients from the facility. The Kamal Ajwan Hospital is located in Beit Lahia, where Israeli soldiers have been fighting an offensive against Hamas militants. This footage shows the hospital earlier this month. Israel claims militants were using it as a base. Staff members deny that and say the hospital has been hit several times recently by Israeli strikes. Also in northern Gaza, U.S. officials confirmed they pushed for a retraction of a recent famine warning for the area. It was issued by the U.S.-funded Famine Early Warning System this week and blamed Israel's, quote, near total blockade of food and water. The U.S. ambassador to Israel criticized that report, saying it didn't account for rapidly changing circumstances on the ground and included out-of-date numbers. The U.S. Agency for International Development, which funds the group, said it found discrepancies in the data and asked for greater review. Meantime, the Yemen main international airport reopened today after Israeli airstrikes hit the facility. At least 3 people were reported killed in yesterday's attack. Israel says it was targeting infrastructure used by the Iran-backed Houthi rebels who had been firing projectiles at Israel for several days. The head of the World Health Organization had been about to aboard a flight when the missiles struck. One member of his plane's crew was injured. Meantime, in Tel Aviv, rocket sirens rang out early this morning as the Houthis responded to Israel's attacks. The Israeli military said it intercepted a missile fired by the group. In New York, word of an indictment in a disturbing crime, the death of a woman who was lit on fire and burned to death in a subway last weekend. Police say Sebastian Zapeta identified himself in photos and surveillance video of the incident during questioning. Prosecutors say he lit the woman on fire at Brooklyn's Coney Island station on Sunday morning and then watched as she burned. Zapeta was indicted on multiple counts of murder as well as arson. Prosecutors said the charges were the toughest they could bring.
Murder in the first degree carries the possibility of life without parole. It's the most serious statute in New York State law, and my office is very confident about the evidence in this case and our ability to hold Zapeta accountable for his dastardly deeds.
Federal officials say the 33-year-old is from Guatemala and entered the U.S. illegally. He remains jailed. The victim has not been identified. On Wall Street today, stocks ended up lower to wrap up the holiday-shortened week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average snapped a 5-session winning streak, falling more than 300 points. The Nasdaq sank nearly 300 points on the day. The S&P 500 also ended firmly in the negative territory. And we have 2 passings to tell you about this evening. The first, legendary sports anchor Greg Gumbel has passed away. In a statement released by his employer, CBS, his family said he leaves behind a legacy of love, inspiration, and dedication to over 50 extraordinary years in the sports broadcast industry, and his iconic voice will never be forgotten. Gumbel was best known for his work as a play-by-play announcer and studio host. Over a career that also included a stint at NBC, he covered basketball, the NFL, and the Olympics, among others. Greg Gumbel was 78 years old. And the oldest living survivor of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor has passed away. When he was 22 years old, Warren Upton was stationed aboard the USS Utah on that fateful morning of December 7, 1941. Years later, Upton told the Associated Press that he was shaving when he first felt the torpedo strike. He then swam ashore to safety. His passing leaves just 15 military personnel still alive who were there that day out of an estimated 87,000. Warren Upton was 105 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, David Brooks and Jonathan Capehart weigh in on the week's and the year's political headlines. We explore Beyoncé's foray into country music, which has deep African and African-American roots. And a look back at 2024 through the camera lens from photographers whose images define the year.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein studio at WETA in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.